and its details have been locked away in the vaults of South Block as protected classified documents, protected by the Official Secrets Act for over half a century. India Today, our sister concern, has accessed top-secret Netaji files which tell the murky tale of untold wealth, greed and betrayal. The files tell the story of how cash, gold and jewellery that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose collected to finance his armed struggle for independence was siphoned away. We are going to get you exclusive details about the mysterious disappearance of Netaji's gold over the next half hour. We will also tell you that why was it that the dispensation of that time did absolutely nothing where this was concerned. A top focus story, the exclusive filed by our sister concern India Today and the TV Today group, where the first time we bring you exclusive details of the then Prime Minister Nehru snooping on Netaji's skin. We now bring you exclusive details from classified Netaji files. Secret government documents reveal the disappearance of a massive fortune collected by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to fund his fight. The Nehru government was alerted about this missing war chest but chose to look the other way.
We are confident that India shall be free. We are confident that Anglo-American terrorism will be wiped out of India.
His charisma and his cause made him a hero for many. Till date, many continue to question Netaji's purported demise in the Taiwan plane crash in 1945. What few know is that that is simply one of the mysteries that got buried in the Taiwan crash. India Today accesses top-secret Netaji files, brings to you details of another burning mystery surrounding Netaji, that of the considerable INA treasure and what really happened to it. Here's what the top-secret files reveal. When retreating from Rangoon, headquarters of the Azad Hind Bank, Netaji carried with him the entire INA war chest. He travelled by road till Singapore, stayed there for a couple of months and then flew to Saigon via Bangkok along with the entire treasure. The INA booty included over 63.5 kgs of gold donated by Indians in the Far East. Netaji left a large part of this treasure in Saigon and journeyed towards his final flight from Taiwan, which crashed. Also destroyed in the aircraft were 2 leather attaches, each 18 inches long, packed with the meager INA gold that Netaji did carry with him. But the story does not end here. The classified files reveal that the then Nehru government was repeatedly warned by top diplomats in Tokyo that the Netaji treasure had been siphoned off by none other than his close aides. 1A Iyer, Publicity Minister in the Azad Hind government, and M. Ramamurthy, former president of the Indian Independence League in Tokyo, were suspected by many to have embezzled the bulk of INA treasure. But Nehru ignored all warnings and instead of initiating an inquiry, went on to reward the suspected conspirators. In fact, in March 1952, PM Nehru read out a message from Iyer in Parliament affirming Netaji's death in the Taiwan crash. The entire sordid saga can be summed up in just a few lines. The once vast INA treasure, worth several hundred crores today, was purportedly siphoned off by Netaji's own aides, even as an unsympathetic government in New Delhi looked the other way. Of the huge INA war chest, comprising gold jewellery and coins weighing nearly 65 kgs, only 11 kgs was brought back to India from Japan in 4 packages in 1952. This was what was recovered from the Taiwan plane crash. The charred remains of the meager treasure sealed and stored in the vaults of the National Museum in Delhi for the last 62 years.
हिंदुस्तान अब गुलाम नहीं रह सकता और न कोई ताकत इसे गुलाम रखी सकती है.
Observers calling the disappearance of the INA treasure pre-India's first scam. With Sandeep Unithan, this is Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
Netaji's war chest at that time, if you're talking about valuation, was about 1 crore. How much that tantamounts to in today? Well, nothing short of 700 crores. It could easily be called the first scam of independent India. I want to bring in right now. We have Sandeep Unnithan. He is the deputy editor of India Today. He's been able to access this classified information. We are also joined by Ardindu Bose. He's the nephew of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He's joining us from Mumbai. Gentlemen, welcome to this special broadcast. Sandeep, let's start with what are the basic details that have emerged? What are the top questions that have come to the fore? Because understandably, the biggest question is right now, if there was information to the then dispensation that there was. And this is not just a war chest. It was, like we pointed out, a treasure of 1 crore rupees at that point of time. If the government was in the know of it, how come no public inquiry was ever carried out?
Well, as you know, the papers that we've got, the confidential government papers, seem to indicate that the government of the day, between 1947 and 1955, for almost a decade, you have Indian diplomats based in Tokyo, 3 very senior diplomats who are repeatedly warning the government that that the INA treasure has been siphoned off. They are giving names, they're giving sequences of events, and they're even naming the guilty. And for a decade, you don't have the government taking any action. And after a few years, you have the Shahnawaz Committee report, which is the first committee of inquiry that goes into Netaji's death and disappearance. That committee also tells the government that this is something that you must investigate. You must investigate what happened to the treasure. I mean, it is worth several hundred crores, and this is this is the treasure that's collected from Indians to finance a freedom movement. So, I mean, you must investigate this, but the government yet again does nothing.
Sandeep, just take us through the sequence of events in terms of what you've been able to gather through the information that you've accessed. Take us through the sequence of events. How is it that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose left most of the war chest in Saigon, which today is the Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam? And did he carry anything on his person? Because there was certain amount of gold which was found in that alleged air crash, which was returned to India and then, of course, put back to the National Museum.
Yes. As you know, the gold was collected from Indians based in Southeast Asia, and when Netaji was fighting for independence, he was based in Singapore and Rangoon. For 2 years, he basically toured Southeast Asia and exhorted the people, give me blood, I'll give you freedom. And every time he spoke, people would come and voluntarily give gold and donate their property, give cash. This treasure amounted several hundred crores, and this was used to finance the Indian National Army, and it was used to finance his Azad Hind government. And now when the Japanese army was defeated in 1945, on the 15th of August, they surrendered, the INA surrendered. In this melee of defeat, you have Netaji and his top aides heading to Manchuria because he wants to go into the Soviet Union. And he's carrying with him most of the treasure. But he's flying in an aircraft which cannot accommodate all of the treasure, so which he's forced to leave some of it behind in Saigon. That comes out in several reports. He's forced to leave the treasure in Saigon with some of his trusted aides, and he takes 2 suitcases with him to fly to Manchuria. And that's when the crash happens in Taiwan. And some of that gold is destroyed in the crash. And in fact, it's 11 kilos that has survived this air crash. And we know that because this was weighed and it was brought to India in secret. Absolute secrecy, 1952. It's brought to India. It's inspected by the government. In fact, the Prime Minister, Nehru, personally inspects the gold and even calls it a poor show. Because, as you know, it was called the INA treasure. But by the time they saw it, it was just a few pieces of molten gold and burnt jewelry, which is now kept in the National Museum. So, I mean, this is one of the biggest mysteries is that
so
how did a fortune...
That's
right. How did a fortune that's over 100 kilos of gold come down to just 11 kilos and the government is not bothered? I mean, there's no investigation, there's no inquiry.
All right, stay on with me, Sandeep. We are joined right now for other political reactions. Jaya Jaitley, former Samata Party leader. Her father was a diplomat who was first to bring up the issue earlier. Ms. Jaitley, what do you make of this? Now, classified information which goes on to suggest that the then dispensation, which was of course headed by Nehru at that time, looked the other way, repeatedly told to order a public inquiry on this massive treasure which was left behind allegedly by Subhash Chandra Bose at Saigon, which today is Ho Chi Minh City.
Yes, well, I think this is just part of the much larger cover-up about Subhash Chandra Bose to start with. I mean, there is still doubt and people still suspect that he did not die in that air crash. And in the same way, I think this cover-up of the amount of treasure which is found and should be there or not there is part of the cover-up, because if they go investigating into that, then they would have probably had to see where was it found, how was it found, under what circumstances, was the air crash actually there, did everyone die? It would have opened up too many things, and unfortunately, when somebody with as remarkable character and integrity as my father, and as most people were in those days who were at high levels of government, there was never like today.
Ms. Jaitley, can you take us through on what your father was a diplomat at that point of time, and he did bring up the issue. Can you give us details on what was brought up by your father and turned down by the then dispensation?
Well, I was such a young child, I wouldn't know the details personally, but I do know he wrote and he kept raising this issue. He kept sending notes. The files were given to Nehru, and when there was this serious allegations about shortages and who was suspected, Nehru just wrote on the file seen and signed it J. Nehru, and that's it. So it's as if, well, okay, you've told me, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And I think my father repeatedly writing and repeatedly questioning meant that it was something he felt was of great historic importance, and that he was not going to let go of it. But when there was a complete blank from this end, eventually he was doing his job. I mean, he was not like those kind of whistleblowers in those days who will hold a press conference or something. But I think that those days there was a lot of plain speaking by honest officials, and my father. And there were a
fair bit of whistleblowers, Sandeep, and that's why we're going to give up their pictures as well, who repeatedly brought to the notice of the government about the treasure, asked for a public inquiry, and was turned down. Ms. Jaitley, the question I want to ask you is, now there is a sense which goes on to suggest that the people that maybe your father, who was a diplomat, then pointed out to as the embezzlers were later probably rewarded by the government. Weren't they, Sandeep?
Yes, that's right. One of the people who was under suspicion, Mr. Iyer, was appointed the publicity minister for the 5-year planning commission in somewhere in 1953. And this gentleman actually traveled to Japan, and where he basically conducted an inquiry into the air crash, and he actually confirmed for the Nehru government that there was indeed an air crash, and that Netaji had died in that.
Ms. Jaitley, do you have any information on that? Do you?
I have no separate personal information, because as I said, I was part of the and I would not have access to any government records.
All right. Appreciate you joining us, Ms. Jaya Jaitley there. Her father was a diplomat at that point of time. She did say, possibly short of being a whistleblower, repeatedly he did bring up to the notice of the then political dispensation, which was headed by none other than Nehru, who refused to carry out a public inquiry or a public investigation where this was concerned. Once again, we want to put forth and bring out there that this is classified information. These are protected documents which have been accessed by Sandeep Unithan, our deputy editor from Mail Today. We are also going to be cutting across to Ardhendu Bose, the nephew of Netaji. And we're going to go across to him as well. But let's break it down for our viewers. The trail of the war chest, which now clearly seems to be nothing short of a massive treasure there. Well, once Netaji, along with his key aides, started retreating from Rangoon, well, that was where the INA was headquartered. He made his way by road. He made his way all the way to Singapore. We're going to just get it right there. Now, by road, he came to Singapore. From there on, Netaji went by air, and he went to Bangkok. And from Bangkok, right there you have it, he went to Bangkok. From Bangkok, he once again took a flight to Saigon in Vietnam. Today, of course, Saigon is known as the Ho Chi Minh City. From Saigon, he left most of the treasure, which tantamounts to nothing short of 700 crores. Today, at that time, the valuation of that was about 1 crore. From there on, he took a flight to Da Nang. From Da Nang, he flew directly to Taiwan, where the alleged crash took place, which killed Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. On his person at that time, apparently, allegedly, he was carrying a bit of gold with him. The charred pieces of the gold was recovered. It was positioned as, of course, the part of the war chest, but most of it was still left right here at Saigon. Now, in Taiwan, there was a fair bit of gold which was found, which was returned to the government, and then Nehru, at that point of time, who was heading the dispensation, said that this should be then taken into the National Museum. However, there was word from the likes of Maulana Azad, who said that gold which was recovered from that alleged plane crash should in fact go to the family of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. I want to cut across at this point of time. We are joined by the nephew of Subhash Chandra Bose, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He joins us from Mumbai there. Ardendu Bose is with us. Mr. Bose, you know, even if we go with what happened at then, what was recovered from that plane crash, there was a fair bit of gold recovered. There were many voices within the government there. One of Mr. Azad, which said that gold should be given to the family of Netaji. But even then, the dispensation thought it was better that this gold was put at the National Museum and not returned to the family. A fair bit of cynicism right now?
At the outset, let me mention that the family was not interested in the gold. The family was not entitled to the gold. The gold belonged to the Indians in Southeast Asia who contributed to the effort of Indian independence. And I've been given to understand that when all this was going on, the Indians there, living at that point of time in Southeast Asia, were extremely upset with all the goings on. And secondly, I think what we should actually wait for all the files to be declassified and opened, for the simple reason that at the moment it is believed, as far as the Mukherjee Commission's information is concerned, that there was no air crash on the 18th August 1945 in Taipei, or in those days
right,
known as Taihoku. So if there was no air crash, then the issue of the missing treasures of the irony gets even more and more intriguing. So it needs a lot of studying into. I think we at the moment it's a guessing game.
Right.
What happened? Who took the measures? It's probably news to the public today and to the media about these treasures having been that treasures did exist.
Right.
But the family knew about it many years ago. My father told me about it when I was 10 years old. And my father also did mention one thing to me, which that just occurred to me a few days ago when I knew about your article in India Today. He did mention something about an aircraft having come into Delhi, and a few chests containing some material were offloaded at Delhi airport and went through customs.
Well, the mysteries
without being stopped or checked.
You know, there are going to be so many theories to it. There's going to be so much opinion on this itself, Sandeep. The question I want to ask you, Mr. Bose, also is, like you pointed out and clarified right in the beginning, that the family was not interested in the gold or the money or the treasure which is looking of the war chest of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. The question I want to ask you then is a fair bit of cynicism, because a lot of diplomats at that point of time acted like whistleblowers, named people who could have been involved in embezzlement of this money. And then on the other hand, the same people who were named as possible embezzlers of the war chest of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose were later awarded by the Nehru government.
Sorry, are you asking me that question?
The fact there were people who were pointed out as possible embezzlers of the war chest of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and the fact that they were rewarded by the Nehru government. A fair bit of cynicism there, Mr. Bose?
There have been stories about people being rewarded and by Netaji Subhash, by the Nehru government, and the names have appeared in your publication today, and I think they were correct. As a matter of fact, Mr. Iyer lived in Mumbai, and my father lived in Mumbai, and Mr. Iyer was very well. My father was very friendly with him, and I met him also when I was a very young man. And well, they were very friendly. But then my father never said anything about his suspicions. Okay. But yeah, we know that
right.
Rewards were handed out to a few people in the INA.
Right.
And those names have already appeared in India today.
All right. So, appreciate you joining us, Mr. Bose. Appreciate, you know, I'm afraid we are running short of time. We're going to keep tracking the story. Appreciate you joining us today on this special broadcast.